And hello, Savannah. Thank you for tuning into WRUULP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. My name is Julia Spencer. Thank you for tuning in. This show is Real Estate Real Talk, and we're going to talk for the next hour about real estate and all kinds of other topics also. So I'm glad you're here. My show is on Wednesdays right around noon, and I'm a local real estate investor. I also have been traveling for the last 2 months. So as promised last week, we are broadcasting live here today, downtown Troop Square, Savannah. And on this show, I'm going to talk a little bit more about my experience in Mexico the last month. I've been traveling for quite some time, and I've gotten some good information about expat living in Mexico, about real estate, about the medical system or lack thereof, or whether or not that's a good thing or not. We're going to talk about that and all kinds of other things. Now, I wanted to tell you all, though, before I get started with the show, that the viewpoints expressed in the following program are not necessarily those of WRUU, its license holder, or its staff. Little disclaimer there. And the way I structure my show is I talk a little bit, I play a little bit of music, talk a little bit more, and so we don't keep it all dry, just talk. And on today's show, I don't have a guest. My business partner is not in town. He's taking care of other properties for me. So it's all me. So you have to deal with me this whole entire week. Yeah, of course, this whole week, but also this actual hour. And I got a couple more songs from my Mexican playlist here as well. We're going to get started. And, by the way, before we get started, wanted to let you know that you might not be able to see my show on the schedule yet if you're listening through online. If you're streaming the show, the schedule has to be updated because I've been gone so long. But I will be posting my shows later on the WRUU.org website. You can also get my shows a little bit earlier if you want to listen to them. They are published on my YouTube channel as well. My name, Julia M. Spencer. It's easy to find. There's no cost or anything. It's just for information. So you can find my shows there. If you missed the last one or the last couple, they're usually on YouTube faster than they are on WRUU.org. And yeah, we're going to play a little bit of music, and I'll be right back. So stay on and don't go anywhere. And thank you for staying with me here with Real Estate Real Talk with Julia M. Spencer. That track was by Boza called Hecha por mí, which means you're made for me. One of my tracks on my Mexican playlist here. Wanted to let you all know, too, that if the songs don't pop up on the web, if you're streaming this online, the names of the songs and everything, we're supposed to have them pop up there on the website. I'm working on that. And yeah, on today's show, this is installation number 2 of Mexican Experience here. We're going to talk a little bit about more of some of the stuff that has happened to us and me. I was in Mexico for close to 6 weeks and got back about 2 weeks ago. So I wanted to tell you a little bit more about medical stuff, about my taxi driver cartel story. So stay on for that. That's pretty wild. And, of course, real estate and the fiduciary estates, I believe, that you need to set up in order to purchase real estate in Mexico. I'm going to explain that a little bit. That doesn't make sense right now, but we'll get to that here in our last segment. Let's talk a little bit about medical stuff, because a lot of you all have actually asked me what it's like to live in Mexico and with the medical system, because a lot of expats maybe are of the older generation, not always, but the medical issues are basically a concern, and how does that work in Mexico? So what I've learned is that if you have health insurance here in the United States, that will, of course, not cover anything in Mexico, unless you have some sort of private insurance that has like exceptions. But for myself and my children, of course, ours is pretty much the cheapest insurance that you can get here, and I pay for it myself because I'm self-employed. So my insurance doesn't cover anything over there, but then again, it actually doesn't cover a whole lot over here in the United States either, so it's not big of a difference for me. But basically what you do there is you have, at least this is my experience. So I'm just sharing my experience. Your experience might be different. So please feel free to chime in. If you listen to the show later on YouTube, you can leave comments or send me email messages to realestate@juliamspencer.com, and I'll address them on future shows or make another video or something about it. But basically the way it works is there is not really a healthcare system per se for everybody, not for Mexican citizens. Unless you're working for the government or you're in some sort of government capacity or something, there is no health insurance per se. You can, of course, purchase private insurance that might cover it. But for all intents and purposes, most people that are citizens do not have insurance. This is what I understood. And my insurance, of course, wasn't covering us while we were there. And the reason I was there is with my mother, because we had to get some medical tests done and some analyses that we couldn't get an appointment for quickly enough in Europe. So since we had to be in Mexico anyways before coming here, we decided to do all this work in Mexico. And my understanding was it's going to be faster and cheaper anyways. And, I was still questioning the fact of the capability or basically the skills of Mexican doctors versus here. But I have been going to Costa Rican dentists for the last 7-8 years and absolutely had no problem with that whatsoever. Had some very good experiences. So I figured, let's try something else. Let's try a different kind of medical tourism here in Mexico. And so I had to basically get my mom analyzed for dementia or Alzheimer's or have some sort of medical condition diagnosed so that we could get her green card basically a little bit faster pushed through here in the United States, which I've already applied for earlier this year. So the point was to get an appointment with a specialist, a psychiatrist or a psychologist or, a brain expert basically to do an analysis and a tomography, actually, a brain scan to show what actually is going on. And that was the quest of going there. And of course, we didn't have any insurance. My insurance wouldn't cover me anyways. My mom's insurance wasn't covering her unless it was an emergency. So we were kind of on our own. So the way we were able to find a medical doctor was through Facebook expat groups, actually. So prior to going to Mexico, I subscribed to all kinds of expat groups online. And for all the different cities that I was going to be in, like Tulum, Cancun, Playa del Carmen. And I basically just signed up to see what people were talking about, what kind of recommendations they were giving to each other, whether the advice was any good, whether there was a lot of hate speech or if it was, actual constructive information. And I had been on that for about a month prior to going to Mexico. So I had kind of the idea of what people were asking for. And this is how I actually was put in contact with the doctor that eventually ended up checking out my mom. And he was a very good doctor. He is a Mexican doctor, not from that area, from a different part of Mexico, but had actually offices in Playa del Carmen and Cozumel. And he was a psychiatrist, and he was able to order the tomography, obviously. We had to pay for that ourselves. I know a lot of you guys asked me about costs and stuff, but the actual initial consultation with the doctor, I believe, was 1,500 pesos, which is about $75. And then the tomography that was ordered was $150. And then the second consult where we got the diagnosis was another $75. So all in all, I guess it was about $300 for the entire medical diagnosis that I had to do with my mom, so which was very much affordable. I did get the actual brain scan. I got a disc with all the information on it. I got the diagnosis. I got the radiology report. And everything was done basically in the hospital in Playa del Carmen. So we had actually a choice of hospitals. Obviously, when you're paying out of your own pocket, that you can choose the hospital you want to go to. You don't have to do any kind of extensive paperwork and referrals and all this other stuff, which annoys the living Jesus out of me when I go here in the United States anywhere. And I have another story about that actually today. But so this was very quick. Everything was done within about a week. And I have all the information that I needed. I did provide all of this to my attorney here in the United States. Everything, of course, is in Spanish. That's if you know how to speak Spanish, you'd be much better off than I was. I speak no Spanish whatsoever, but I've been learning. But the good thing is you have Google Translate, and you have all kinds of Say Hi, I think is the app that I was using, where you basically speak into the phone and it kind of recites everything in the other language to the person. So you don't have to actually write anything or worry about spelling or anything like that. You can just kind of pronounce what you're saying in English, and it pronounces it in Spanish to the person standing next to you. Provided, of course, you have Wi-Fi connection or data, which is not always the case in Mexico. And especially if you go to cities or outside cities, Wi-Fi connectivity or data connectivity via towers is not very good whatsoever. You kind of have to be next to a hotspot wherever you are. There's no towers like they are here. So yeah, that was a little bit of a difficulty. But most everybody actually speaks some English. And the doctor that we were seeing he said he knew about maybe like 50% English. I don't know what that meant, but we had a little bit of a difficulty talking to each other. But he was able to make a couple of phone calls, and the young kid came from some other department, and he spoke better English, so we were able to have a translator. And everybody is extremely helpful and very efficient. You know, I was very, very happy with the whole entire medical experience. This is my only experience I had in Mexico. I didn't have any issues that I had to go to the doctor for, but this was something that was very important for me to get done while I was there. So for those of you that are interested in, going to Mexico for medical tourism or tourism period, or just if you're considering even moving there, that's something to consider, of course, if you have medical conditions. But let me tell you a little bit before we take another break. We have a couple more topics here. I wanted to tell you a little bit about how it was actually going to the hospital, because, you know, when you say Mexico and hospital, and I'm even guilty of this prejudgment that, it's going to be crazy, it's going to be bad, it's going to be dirty, and that it's not like that at all. It's perfectly safe. It's clean. I mean, it's anything you can think of here in a hospital, it's exactly the same in Mexico. They have also private hospitals that are where everybody's basically native English speaking. And you have the hospitals that the locals actually use, as well as the expats and tourists. And you're better off if you know some Spanish there, of course. But if you have a little bit of Spanish and you're willing to communicate with hands and feet and have some patience, then that's not a problem at all. So those hospitals, of course, are cheaper. The private hospitals with all English-speaking people are a little bit more expensive. But since you're paying for everything yourself anyways, then it's actually not a problem. Let's talk about paying and actually what kinds of things can you do at these hospitals, at these medical offices. The way we were actually dropped off at this particular hospital, and I knew for a fact that we had to do some sort of radiology scan. And the scans and all the prices are advertised on their Facebook and on their websites, and you can do all kinds of COVID tests and antibody tests and everything, and the prices are pretty much preset. So you walk into the entryway of the hospital basically, and you have a big board basically hanging in front of the receptionist, and it's kind of like what you see when you go to a McDonald's or fast food. It's basically pick and choose what you want. You know, you want a tomography, this is the price. You want an MRI, this is the price. You want an exam with whatever doctor, this is the price. So all the prices are set, and you can basically just walk in and order. While I was there waiting for the radiology report, another person had walked in from another country. It wasn't the United States. It wasn't a native English-speaking person. He had some sort of Eastern accent, like a Slavic accent, I guess. And he basically just wanted to know how much does it cost to get a surgery to get a cyst removed for his partner. The person at the reception basically said they don't know. It has to be ordered by one of their doctors. But if the person could bring in the report from a doctor from another country, that would be fine too. So the way I understood it is that you can actually get some sort of surgery order or some sort of procedure order from another doctor from anywhere in the world, and you can go to a Mexican hospital, and if they have that specialty available there, you can have it done there, and they have a set price for that. That's the way I understood it. And that I thought that was kind of convenient because, again, I'm always been a proponent of medical tourism because I just hate paying high prices here. Being a single mom here in the United States and having my deductible be like $5,000 or something crazy, it's just a little bit more of a feasible solution for a lot of things. So anyways, I wanted to share that with you all, the actual medical experience and how that all went down. If you have any further questions about it, please let me know. I do have contacts now, and I can find out things for you. If you're thinking about anything like that, for information, I'll be glad to share whatever information I have. Of course, this show right here is on real estate, so we're going to talk about real estate, I promise. My email, of course, is realestate@juliamspencer.com. Just send me a message if you heard this show, if you hear it later on. I'm available, and I'll be glad to talk to you. Be heading back to Mexico again, probably in March, and might be spending some time every year there, just to take care of things of the medical nature. Before we get to the break here, we usually have a break point here at the bottom of the hour. Wanted to share my experience today, actually, this very day today, Wednesday, the 20th of January here. I'm going to the doctor here in the United States because as we're getting back, of course, I need to have some stuff done with my son who needed a prescription for which he needed to have a blood test done for first. We went to a primary healthcare provider, our primary healthcare provider right here in Savannah, and we're sent to a specialist. This was about 2 months in the making now. The specialist had prescribed us something that didn't work, and then we had to go back, and then he had to prescribe something else. But the second set of medication needed a blood test. So we were sent back to our primary healthcare provider, our actually primary doctor, to go to their lab to do this blood work. But of course, we couldn't use their lab unless we actually had another exam. So we got basically the circle around, run around today, and you could hear me actually sitting in their office this morning going, this would have been done already if this was Mexico. And I was just getting very frustrated because they were putting us on hold on this bench and on this bench, and we had to get another appointment. And then we were a walk-in basis because we didn't have an appointment. We had one for the lab, but not the doctor. I mean, it was just a big mess. I understand having procedures and rules to go by, and you can hear me talk forever on medical issues. I'm not an expert on this. I'm a real estate expert. But I just think that things could be done, hint, a lot more efficiently in this country when it comes to the medical system, and a lot cheaper. So that being said, that is my opinion. I did read my disclaimer in the beginning of the show, so I hope you heard that. I will also say that at the end of the show. But we are at the bottom of the hour just about. We got about 2 minutes left. What we do on the show here, we have a couple of public service announcements that we have to play at the bottom of the hour, and another announcement about donations, which we always appreciate if you are so inclined. And I'm going to play some more music. And then after that, I think my next topic, not quite yet real estate. I want to talk about the taxi driver cartel kidnapping story. That's going to be interesting. And I'll be right back after that. The next song is by Gold Kimono, To Tomorrow. I'll be right back after that. Stay on. Don't go anywhere.
The Savannah Philharmonic has announced a dynamic new concert series for spring 2021. Monthly indoor concerts with a masked, socially distanced audience will feature various ensembles of the Philharmonic at either the Metal Building at the Kehoe Iron Works downtown or Skidaway Island United Methodist Church locations. These concerts will culminate in the season finale outdoor concert of the full Philharmonic on June 27th at Trustees Garden. More information can be found at savannahphilharmonic.org. This is a message from the Georgia State Department of Public Health. Social distancing means minimizing contact with people. It also means that if you are near someone in public, try to stay at least 6 feet away. The less contact people have with one another means the less opportunity for the virus to spread. Slowing the spread of the virus means that we can keep our healthcare system from becoming overwhelmed. More information can be found at dph.georgia.gov.
What does it mean when we say that WRUU is a community radio station? It doesn't just mean that we invite the community to create programming, and it doesn't just mean that we are a voice for the community. It also means that we are counting on the community to keep us going. And you are the community. Almost all of our modest budget comes from small annual or monthly donations from listeners like you. You get to enjoy our community-focused programming because many others have stepped forward to do their part. Now do your part by joining our community of listener donors. Go to WRUU.org right now and make a one-time or monthly donation. And thank you for supporting Savannah's community radio station, 107.5 FM.
Thank you for tuning into Real Estate Real Talk with Julia M. Spencer. I really appreciate you being here. And on today's show, this is our second installment of a review of the Mexico adventure. Just came back from Mexico, was there for about 6 weeks, and I plan to go back. A lot of you actually asked me how easy was it to get into Mexico, being that we're in pandemic times. Unfortunately for me, I had to travel more this year than any other year before. I've been to Europe twice already. I've been to Mexico twice already. And I've been just traveling like nonstop. It's just been crazy. All I can say is that the airplanes going to Europe are extremely empty. There's literally nobody on those airplanes. Obviously, since Americans really still can't get into Europe unless you have like a specific reason why you need to be there. But the borders to Mexico are open, and Mexico invites everybody. Nobody is restricted to go into Mexico. There's no tests required or any kind of other documentation or quarantine. So, everybody that's normally traveling to wherever is now going to Mexico, and Mexico is definitely loving this upswing of tourism dollars, and they're very much appreciative. The airplanes to Mexico are full to the max. So if I haven't gotten COVID yet, which I think I actually already had last year, earlier, really, really early, like in January of 2020, if I didn't get it then, though, I don't see why I haven't gotten it yet, because on these filled airplanes, specifically the one from Germany was 12 hours long. It was just filled to the rim, and the airports are filled to the rim going to Mexico, and streets in Mexico are full, and the ferry to Cozumel was so packed I actually had to go outside to find like a standing spot. I mean, you think pandemic, I guess people don't, I don't know. Pandemic, I guess, doesn't exist in Mexico. I'm sure it does. I'm just saying that where I was, there wasn't people wearing masks. They're being socially responsible, and social distancing, though, it does not exist. It can't. There's just too many people. So anyway, that aside the point, let's talk a little bit about some other stuff that happened in Mexico before we get to the real estate part, which actually isn't very long, because I learned only one little thing here that I wanted to share, and that I haven't shared last time yet. So while we were driving to the hospital, we had several appointments with my mom and also by myself. I kind of gotten to talk to the taxi drivers, and some of the taxi drivers, very good English speaking. Some don't speak English whatsoever, not at all. And it's really difficult to kind of hold a long conversation with a translating software. So I'm talking about Mauricio here, who was my taxi driver from Tulum to Playa del Carmen several times. And he was sharing with me that he is a very happy taxi driver because he has a regulated good job. And he is, because he came from a different part of Mexico, actually. And the reason he moved to Tulum, to Playa del Carmen, is because he got a little bit into the heat with one of the Mexican cartels. So cartels are basically the drug mafias of Mexico. And apparently the story has changed a little bit, because I was with him several times on different taxi rides. And part of the story was the same, and every time he told the story, and part of it was different. So you can kind of extrapolate which part was the real story and which part was the made-up story, or which one was maybe a little bit, I don't know, flowered up, I guess. I don't know how to say that. But basically, he was telling me that he was kidnapped by the cartel. He was held hostage for 2 weeks, and eventually they shot him and dumped him on the side of the road. Somebody, I guess, found him, took him to the hospital, and he was miraculously, he survived. He lost part of his hair. His hair actually had like shaved. I don't know what they did. I didn't understand exactly what he was saying, but he basically just barely survived. And the reason we were talking about this, because I was just basically asking him how much does it cost to go to the hospital for something serious like that, and does he have health insurance? And he explained to me that no, taxi drivers don't have health insurance. They're not government employees. Only government employees do that. He actually has to pay the hospital for the next, 20 years every month, so and so much, to pay off his hospital bill. And the reason he was kidnapped by the cartel to begin with was because his cousin, I guess, ratted him out and told the cartel that he had money, and the cartel wanted that money, and so they kidnapped him to get to the money. But apparently he didn't have the money, so he was held until they realized that he didn't have any, and then they just got rid of him. The second time he told me the story, there was no word at all from his cousin ratting him out. There was he kind of didn't address it. I think maybe he forgot what he told me the first time. So I'm not sure this is all completely correct. But part of his story actually was that he at some point was so scared of the cartels that he tried to get to the United States. So he crossed the border illegally, and he was driving on the highway, or riding in the highway in somebody else's car, I guess, on the interstate, and he was stopped by police. And of course he didn't have identification and was sent back. And so this is when he had to basically start over in Mexico. He said he's never going to be able to go back to the United States because of this, because he came here illegally the first time. But he was okay with that as long as he had this taxi job. And maybe it was just a way to kind of like make me feel sorry for him so I can give him a bigger tip. Of course, I understand that. And so that was my taxi driver cartel story, basically. What did I learn from that? What I learned from that is that everybody has a story. Some of them, the tip is worth maybe the story if it was real or not. I don't know. But he did have children, and they were little, and he showed me their pictures. Actually, one of them called him while he was on one of these long taxi drives with me, and so I'm fairly sure that that part of the story at least was right, and he was able to get a good tip from me, so that's a good thing. But he actually also that actually worked out for me later on, because I had to be picked up in the dark night at a place where there was not a whole lot of illumination, at a restaurant near a beach, and he actually came there and waited for me and found me, so I didn't have to go hail a random taxi on the street to go somewhere. So that was a good thing. Also, he gave my friend and business partner Daniil some really good information about different kinds of tequilas, which ones are the best ones, which ones are not so good, which ones you'll get sick from in the morning, and which ones are good for your body. I don't know how good tequila can be for your body in any kind of amount, because I don't drink it. But, the difference between the ones with the worm in it and so on and so forth. You probably have more information about this than I do here, my dear listeners in Savannah. So it's very entertaining, if anything. And we learned quite a bit. He also told me a little bit about how much money he actually makes being a taxi driver. He says in a good month, he'll make, I want to say he said something like on a good day, if he can, $50 or something, or maybe $100, that was a really, really good day. So whenever he has rides to the airport, those are high dollar rides, basically, because they're an hour and a half, 2 hour long. and he makes good money, but he does have to pay about 40% of his earnings to the taxi rental company, and then of course he has to pay the cartels to actually even have a job. So everybody pays the cartels. If you don't pay the cartels, you just don't have a job. That's kind of like the way he explained it to me. He also said that his wife is a nurse, but she's never worked as a nurse because she has to give 30% of her income to the cartels to be able to have a job. So that's how that works. For those of us that are very adverse to corruption and the way this system works, it might be very problematic to hear stories like this. But from what I've seen and what I've heard is it's generally accepted. It's very well known that corruption happens like this, and that's just how the system works, and everybody works with it, and everything's functioning. Like I said in my previous show, we've seen very little crime. I'm sure it happens. We just didn't see it. People were keeping in line pretty much. When you have police driving down the street with machine guns, you kind of just do whatever they say and don't try not to get into trouble too much. Anyways, the only people that I've seen that are kind of been loud were British people. Those of you listening that are from there, those are the loudest partiers that I have seen. So that's just my own personal opinion. Again, I'm going to read that disclaimer at the end of the show so you can don't take personal offense anyways, anything we say here on the radio. So that was that. See, I have one more thing to share with you about real estate specifically that I've learned from this hippie-ish kind of dude that I met at the street juice bar. And that's a whole handful. So we're going to leave you with that and come right back to that story after another song. And this one is by Tom Gregory, and it's called Fingerchips. Be right back after that. Don't go anywhere. And thank you for staying with me here for Real Estate Real Talk with Julia. I'm Spencer for our last segment here. We got about 13 minutes left. Thank you for sticking with me. You are listening, by the way, to WRULP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with Global Soul. I'm so glad to be back in the studio. I love being a radio host and DJ and sharing information with you as always. So let's talk a little bit about real estate. We got to squeeze in a little of that since this is a real estate show and not just like adventure show. Although I kind of tried to combine both of them anyways. Where are my glasses? There we go. Okay. So when I was staying in Tulum, right on the beach, there was a little juice bar across the street. And this is where I would get my coffee in the morning and freshly pressed juices as well. And they had some amazing ones. I actually was chatted up a local hippie guy, which there's a bunch of them. Like we said in our previous show, Tulum is a small little Mexican town about an hour south of Playa del Carmen. And it's a little beach town. It's got about 40,000 inhabitants, but many, many more expats and people that are the bunny slipper workforce right now. Anyways, people who work from home from the United States. And this guy right here was from Colorado. Actually, I met a lot of people from Colorado. And he basically talked to me about real estate investing. And he said that, you got to be careful buying real estate because what you're buying that's within a certain distance from the beach or from any kind of border to another country is actually restricted for foreigners to buy and can't be bought by them directly. And I thought he was joking because that didn't make sense to me. But I looked it up actually, and it actually is true that foreigners can own property in Mexico, but outside the restricted zones, it's going to be only in those areas can it be direct deeded to with the same rights and responsibilities as Mexican nationals. But if it's inside a restricted zone, and a restricted zone is defined as 50 kilometers, about 31 miles from shorelines, and 100 kilometers, about 62 miles from international borders, it has to be put in a Mexican trust, basically. And has to be a different kind of legal structure in order to own property that way. And of course, anybody and everybody pretty much that wants to own property in Mexico is going to want it probably pretty close to a border or a beach. That's when you would have to put it into a special trust, and there's going to be a couple of rules that you need to follow. And although it is a great deal from what I was told, and this is actually something that is set forth in Article 27 of the Mexican Constitution, that all land located within 100 kilometers of any national border and within 50 kilometers of any ocean, it can't be directly deeded to a foreigner. So that is called actually the restricted zone. Another thing that I learned about taxes in Mexico is that owners of real estate in Mexico must pay yearly state property tax, which varies depending on the state, but it isn't a significant amount because the tax is levied on the registered value of the property, which tends to be low and not corresponding to market value. So this is kind of like some of the things that I've learned. What is it like to actually own real estate in Mexico? I will have to find some people that actually own it there and are foreigners, which I haven't been able to get on my show yet, but I'm working on. So if you have any specific questions about this, please do not hesitate to contact me. My email address is realestate@juliamspencer.com. This is work in progress and research in progress, of course. And for the time being, my plan is to just rent. Rent is extremely cheap, as I mentioned in my previous show. For a 1,500 square foot townhome that we rented that had 3 bedrooms and 3.5 bathrooms and a rooftop, we actually only paid about $800 a week, which was the Airbnb fully furnished, all utilities included price. If you wanted to did for a long-term rental, it was anywhere from $400 to $700 a month. So it's extremely affordable. There's no need to buy something if you can rent something for that cheap. And in all my real estate shows and all my advice and anything and everything that I always talk about, you need to look at this 1% rule. If the property can rent for cheaper than 1% of the property value, then it is more efficient for you to actually rent it. But if it's more expensive than the 1% of the property value, then it's better to buy. So that's a whole nother show, and you can check up on that on my YouTube channel. I've talked about that extensively, the 1% rule. And I hope this was useful to you. I hope you enjoyed the show. I'm really glad I could share this with you. I don't know if I have more information about Mexico. I think we have a couple more stories to share once my business partner comes back. Specifically, stay tuned in the future for the story about all of us falling asleep when we had a Spanish numbers lesson on our tour bus. That's a whole nother story. And us also completely cracking up and laughing the whole 2 hours. That was another story we're going to talk about. But for that, of course, my business partner needs to be here because he can tell it much better than I can. And before I get off the air here, I wanted to let you know that the viewpoints expressed in the preceding program were not necessarily those of WRU, its license holder, or its staff. In addition to that, the songs that I played on this show today probably did not show up on your screen, so I'm going to tell you I'm playing another song here in a moment. It's called Azul by J Balvin. After the show is going to be African music hosted by Ben. I hope you stay on for that. If that's not your thing, check out our schedule. We got all kinds of other shows and all kinds of other genres of music and talk shows, so check those out. If you want to hear the show later on, go to wruu.org. I'll post the show there. It's also going to be on my YouTube channel, Julia M. Spencer. And any questions, comments, suggestions, criticism, constructive preferably, anytime, please send it to me. I look forward to hear it. And I hope you all have an awesome, awesome rest of your week and a good Wednesday, and enjoy the weather out there. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.
For your free guide to real estate investing, visit juliamspencer.com.